I haven't read a YA book in a really long time. I realized, um, and I want to hear your thoughts on this first chapter. There's something about the 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 political climate of today that stuck out to me when I was reading the first chapter, because it's kind of like a group of almost like a group of police in a sense, a group of women policing the streets.
I agree with you. I kept going back to it because of that. Like I think I reread the first chapter like 2 or 3 times because of what's going on in our times currently.
Yeah.
Right? Like I got attracted to this book because my daughter loves this author. So she got excited when she was going, reading over my shoulders and she saw the book. So she was supposed to join me. So we were supposed to do this together, but she's getting her hair braided. I'm like, you knew this was supposed to be today, right?
Next week. But do you know what I'm saying? Something about the policing of these streets by a group of like very aggressive people that I couldn't shake. I couldn't shake it off. I really thought about kind of the times today. I really enjoyed, though, I have to say, I really enjoyed, and this is kind of, I think, what I really miss about YA, is how the setting is described, especially when on the first few pages, on pages 4 and 5, when she is discussing, when she describes the city for the first time, and the towers. Now there's like one ruler of the towers. Everyone else like lives underground and the streets are empty. What are some of your thoughts on that? Because one of the first things I thought was like a massive housing project. When there's like one ruler, and you know what I thought of? That old movie called New Jack City. Does anyone remember that? Ron, do you remember that movie?
Yeah, I do.
There was this massive housing project that they took over at one point,
Mm-hmm.
and they ran it, and they deal drugs out of it. And that just, I could not, it was almost too simple to the mega city and the Sueno tab and the,
Carla,
are
you speaking, or should we mute you, Carla?
Okay, she muted herself. But what really, the first like 10 pages, what really stood out to me was the paragraph where she was describing how families would take children to the camps, not even their children, would take their girls to these camps, these like brutal training camps, like praying that they would be chosen to stay in the camps and learn how to fight and be a patroller. I mean, it's already a bit strange. I guess maybe a bit non-traditional that like a girl gang is like taking over the city and they're all really young. But I think what was like really well done was kind of how she played with the traditional gender roles, because this is a group of women, of girls.
Yeah.
But they have male traits.
Yeah, and I think that's her intention. Her intention is to kind of flip the norms so that normally books like this are written from a male point of view, particularly like what are those books with the Divergent books series of books where
Minecraft?
No, not Minecraft. It's a whole series of books where it's a teenage antagonist and she's the hero. where normally it would be like the man would be the hero, but Lilliam is trying to flip that and make the young woman the hero, but also place it in her community of the Bronx. Lilliam no longer lives in the Bronx, but this is where she was born and raised. So I think that's what she's trying to just flip the whole idea on its head.
And I got that. But what I was really curious, I want to hear your thoughts on, was that she's doing it. She is flipping the idea on its head, but at the same time, the traits, kind of the character traits that the girls have are very masculine. They're not really using their femme power, if you will, to kind of defeat and conquer. They're violent. Look, and
yeah, but I'm sorry, I don't want to take over the conversation. People jump in, but I think that's intentional. Like, she doesn't want to play into those traditional gender roles of how, in quotes, how women fight as opposed to how men fight. She wants to explore how people who want to succeed or who want to win will fight, regardless of their gender, and also regardless of their age. So normally these are older people, older characters, but she is making the I'll put hero in quotes. She's making the hero of these books female.
Does anyone else want to add?
What I got from it is that it's a dystopian society where these are very young girls that have no choice but to kind of put their vulnerability aside, because they live in a world where there seems to be chaos, disorder. It's not a normal world anymore, and they have to fight to survive. And the main character seems to have a golden mind, and is to get to the tower. So whatever it takes to get there, she will have to do and train all her girls so that they can have the goal together and move to a better, life. And it shows a sense of vulnerability when they think about the past, when she thought about her sister, but she didn't allow herself to feel that moment because it makes you weak. You don't have time to reminisce about something that used to be. It's in the now, and now means survival.
Yes, I'm so glad you said that, because one thing I was thinking of was also when she talked about her mom. When she talked about her mom, and when she talked about her dad, that's a little further into I think that's in the 4th through 5th chapter. But I think the line was like, her father is a ghost. She didn't even see him at all. So that softness, it has to be there just because of those kind of lines. But in these first few pages, she's so tough. She's so tough. And I mean, I really, sorry, Ron, but I really appreciated how the men were like the second-class citizens.
Right.
Oh, yeah. What did you guys think about that?
Don't take it personally.
I liked it.
Go ahead, Gloria. Share your point of view, sweetie.
Well, I liked that the women were more in control of mostly everything, and how they took over everything, and how boys would usually just have those kind of secondary jobs, and they don't really play like that much of an important role. It's more like all about the woman and how they're so tough and how they fight for what they want and stuff like that.
Sometimes when I read books like this, I think of Robin Hood, like the traditional story of Robin Hood, this kind of young man who sort of rallies his other men behind him, and they take on the good, but the good is really bad, so like the king or the people in power, they're kind of like this sort of outside group who's trying to like really fight for good, even though they are labeled as bad, but it's flipped. And Lilliam always or usually makes those characters women. So now we see these traits we normally associate with men, like Gloriana said. Now women have these traits, and women are kind of uplifted, and the men are like secondary to women, which, why not?
I agree.
Law that says, even though we buy into these kind of gender roles, there's no reason, if we believe that, women are as smart as men, all right, go for it. You're the hero. Why not be the hero?
You know what? I agree with that. But one thing I want to kind of invite into the space, kind of picking back off of what Ron just said, is like in Robin Hood, they were like, that was kind of like their theme. They were robbing from the good to give to the poor. Like that was their theme. I don't know if I believe yet that these girls, Chief Rocka and her girls, like, I don't know if they believe, like, I think they like being bad. Like, I think they like being bad batch,
Mm-hmm. I mean, but so, and in Robin Hood, they also like being bad.
Oh, did they? I haven't read that in a long time. I need to reread that. Yeah. I thought they were on the lines of like, oh, we're the good guys.
They were the good guys, but they were the good guys sort of working against the system.
Yeah.
So like the people felt they were the good guys, but the establishment didn't want them to, have power because they were fighting for the people. And the establishment was trying to suppress the people or oppress the people. And that's not the way it should be. I'm sorry, Gloria.
I think Rocka and her, right, I think Rocka, oh, go ahead, Gloria.
I was gonna say that I liked how in the story, they're not, the Chief Rocka is not all about like fighting. She also says that that they need to use smarts.
Right.
You want to talk more about that? Because I agree with you. She also, right when we first meet them, the new recruits have to recite their history, and I think that part is really important, that they're tough, but she kind of let us know in the beginning that they were also really smart, and that was going to be how they were going to win a lot of the battles, right? So one thing I kind of want to talk about, though, with that being said, like feeling that way and how we feel about Chief Rocka and the smarts that she has and that she's using and she's influencing her girls, like, how do you feel about that in connection to their kind of beef? They're like street beef with the other crew, the Deadly Venom. But is it the Deadly Venom?
There's a few crews, but like I'd say Deadly Venoms is one of like the main enemies.
I think that when they meet each other, like in the club, and they have that scene, there's something very like, one thing, and I wrote it down, one thing about this book that I really love is kind of the mix of like old school and next. Because when they meet in the club, these like two rival crews, I kind of thought about like in the early 90s when my mom used to talk about like rival gangs meeting in the club and having like dance-offs.
That supposedly is taken from how hip hop got started. There used to be in the Bronx. There used to just be straight up gangs, and there was a gang member was killed, and they called a truce, and after that, those same gangs, so like the Zulu Nation, which is one of the founders of hip hop, there used to be a gang called the Black Spades. And they were one of the gangs, and the head of the Zulu Nation was Africa Bambaataa. And Africa Bambaataa went on to become one of the top DJs and rappers early on in hip hop. So that's where they kind of take that, like these gangs kind of then starting these crews that were meeting on the dance floor and doing breakdancing as opposed to fighting. And that's why a lot of the breakdance moves look aggressive. You know, they're kind of jumping back and forth at each other. It's supposed to be mimicking like if you're fighting. And the glory is you can actually leave yourself unmuted if you want to, as long as there's no noise in the background, just so you can kind of talk quicker.
You know, Ron, I wonder if the author was thinking about like that history when she wrote this.
She's from the Bronx.
I think we'll have to ask her that, because I don't think there is, I mean, it's kind of too close that Raka and Bambaataa rhyme, you know? Mm-hmm. And that kind of sounds like, I wonder if she was thinking about like that story of hip hop.
And also that term, or that name, Chief Raka, that was something that a lot of DJs used, like to rock the party. They were the Chief Raka.
Oh.
And there was also a famous DJ in New York who called himself the Chief Raka, Frankie Crocker. This is going back to the 70s now, so. Long before most of you were born, but if not all of you. So yeah, so that's the connection, like Chief Raka.
I mean, Gloriana and Gloria, what are your thoughts on like kind of that gang but family? Because to me, I know they're in a gang, but they feel more like a family to me. I know none of them are related, but that idea that is very inherent in the Bronx too, as heavy as like the kind of gang culture that Ron just described. To me, in the Bronx, that familial culture is like very heavy. Did you pick up like on any of that when you were reading?
I did. When there was the scene where the youngest member, the 12-year-old, got in trouble, and they were debating whether or not they should save her or not, but they decided to act upon that because she's being initiated into the family, and that's what family do. They look out for each other, whatever it takes. So they may seem very tough, but I think it's because, like I said, it's an unfortunate society that they're living through, and they have to act upon to be safe.
Like Manos Duros.
Yeah, you can talk about her.
Like in the story, Manos Duros, how she would keep that picture of the towers, and she would always kiss it, and because she dreamed of being in the towers one day. She showed her emotions there and wasn't so tough there.
Yeah.
And also, I'm sorry. They're also carrying on with the death of her, yeah. So I think they're a little upset about that because this person meant a lot to them. So yeah.
And kind of that idea of like moving on up. That actually, I was a bit, I guess I was a bit troubled, but not troubled, but I was curious to know what you guys thought. Because usually when you have a main character, right, they have a goal, and then they have an antagonist, right? And usually the main character is trying to like get out of where their situation is, right? Usually they're trying to go somewhere else. They're trying to travel and go on a journey. I mean, what did you ladies think about that, in the sense that this main character, the goal wasn't, at least in these first 5 chapters, the goal isn't to get out. The goal is just to stay in the mega city, but to go to the 536th floor.
Well, the way I see that is, I feel like maybe eventually they will make it, but I think sometimes when you have different ideas, and you're worrying about other people, it may either take you longer or you may not necessarily get there. So you have to make a decision whether your family is really your family and they're gonna, you know, accept and work towards that goal that you mutually have with each other. Because you know what this remind me of, how you mentioned the movie. I remember that movie too. But it remind me more with the Book of Eli with Denzel Washington. I don't know if you guys ever seen that film.
Yeah.
Well, Denzel Washington has the Bible, the book. They call it the book, and his goal was to get to a place where this book is supposed to, you know, I guess, instill law and order within the new society. And I feel like this story, we only read 3 chapters. I saw in the email, just read the first 3, so we didn't get to the 5th chapter. But within this 3 chapters, it seems to me like that is the goal. The goal is a representation of that book, you know, just making the similarities between the movie and
Yeah.
like their goal is, their book is the towers, because in the towers, the life is better. They have better options. They have, I guess, better food, better jobs, better everything, you know, and living in the streets, it's not so safe. You're constantly hustling. You're constantly on the lookout. You don't have a moment for peace. And then there's this thing of the sueños, you know, the drug.
Oh, the sueño types.
Yeah, so that had me, you know, first of all, I just want to say we're part of another book club. It's more like geared towards my daughter's age. It's not very diverse. So the language in this book was so different for us. Yeah. And I actually had so much fun reading it, because the other book club that we belong to, the books are more biographical, and, you know, it has a lot of historical point, things like that. The language is very different. But this one, I was acting it out. I really got into character. My daughter was watching me like and laughing. And, you know, I love how they use the Spanish terms. To me, they were terms of endearment.
Yeah, totally.
And it just, I don't know, it made the character and the story more real, and you felt it more. I feel like maybe my style of reading is urban rather than, I mean, I love biographies. You know, I do personally read a lot of biographies, but this book is very urban to me, and it's fun. And while it's fun and humorous, it's also touching. You know, there's a lot of serious themes throughout this. We only read the first 3 chapters, but, you know, there's a lot of serious themes throughout, but it's humorous, it's emotional, and you can connect. And I don't know if it has to do because we're Puerto Rican, but
are you in the Bronx?
No, we're in Westchester County.
Okay.
Yeah, so you know, to me it reminds me of the P.D. Thomas books. I don't know if you guys ever read that. I read that in college.
Yeah, we read one of his books in the book club.
Yeah, Down This Mean Street. It's like one of my favorite books. So this book kind of reminds me of that urban feel, and I'm just really enjoying it. And I'm happy that she enjoyed it as well, because I could tell that she was really into it, you know?
Yeah. One of our goals, so we, just to kind of give you some background on the books that we select and everything, about 2 years ago, I started a book club called One Book, One Bronx. It's mainly for adults. We read, in that book club, we read adult books. And then Casita Maria, which is a community organization in the South Bronx, asked us to come in and start a book club in their location. And we're trying to read a variety of different books. So one of the things I really want to do, all of our books reflect the community of Black and Latino people. And one of the things I wanted to do eventually was select a book that both adults and their kids could read together. So this is our first really success at doing that. So that's why I'm happy that the book really connected with both of you.
Yes, thank you. And
thank you.
I'm Puerto Rican, but, you know, I didn't really grow up in my culture the way a lot of people like me. So I identify 100%. I'm very Puerto Rican. I mean, I even studied Puerto Rican studies in college just because I felt like I needed to identify more with my culture. Yeah. But my children didn't really grow up with what I grew up. And We have joined many activities and events and book clubs, but I don't feel like the books are very diverse. I don't feel like there's a lot of culture in it. And, you know, we don't really 100% identify with most of the stories that we read.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
because they're not geared towards people like me.
Yeah.
And I saw this, I think I got it in an email. I wanted to try it. And we were lucky to get a book through some applications, so we didn't even need to pay for it,
cool,
which was great.
cool.
And just seeing my daughter's reaction, because I want her to know, I want her to feel connected. I want her to learn about diversity. And I think I've done a pretty good job in doing that, but it's just the books per se, there's not a lot of availability. You have to really dig to find, you know, so I'm just so grateful.
Thank you. Thank you. You should have been with us for the last book. We read a book called Daughters of the Stone. It was about 5 generations of Puerto Rican women.
Oh, wow.
Starting in the 1800s through the 2000s. It was really good turnout. Everybody enjoyed that book. Everybody enjoyed the book.
Nice.
I'm sorry I don't say anything, but I didn't get prepared, so I'm listening. And
that's all right.
While talking to you, you know, like all these gadgets, I have the phone, and you know how when everything like works for you, I just downloaded the book. It's funny. I said, did I just download the book? And I did. So, you know, but I'm listening. So hopefully for the next time, I read more.
But also, you know, one of the things we want to do with this book club, of course, we want to discuss the book, but we also want to discuss issues related to who you are and what you are doing with your life and how you can bring those stories into this space. So yeah, we do talk about the books, but you don't have to feel like, oh, I must only talk about the book. Because when we talk about like more adult books, we're really talking about community. We're talking about gender and race and socioeconomic conditions that might be reflected in the book. They may not be reflected in the book. But we're just trying to use a book as a place to start conversations. We don't have to be bound by the book. You know, like that's the only thing we can talk about. Like, you know, like how I was talking about earlier, the history of hip hop and how, you know, it kind of started with gang culture. That's about this book, but it's also a separate history that's connected to the Bronx. So that's how we try to do the book club.
Good.
So that's why I always tell people, even if you haven't read the book, you can still join us because we all have conversations that we can contribute to the narrative or dialogue.
Very good. Thank you.
You.
One of the I think one of the most telling things about the main character, and I feel like I remember like this feeling maybe when I was in middle school. I think one of the most telling things about the main character is in chapter 3, when they're at the club and one of the Deadly Venom crew members like accidentally bumps into them, and she says like, I have to beat her up, like just because it doesn't look good if I let her pass.
Yeah.
I think that's so telling of the main character's personality, you know? Like, even though she's very tough, like, I don't think she's, like, vicious. You know, I don't think she has, like, a lot of malice on her heart.
I can turn the light.
I think that it's like small moments like that that we're really going to just kind of taking the play on how the author writes. I think it's small moments like that we're going to have to kind of unpack and like really learn the character, like in those like small paragraph ways. Another way kind of like that internal dialogue that she has with herself. One of the best lines, I think, in these chapters are when she says, what did she say? There are times when I'm not even certain if this memory is mine.
Oh, yeah.
Perhaps I stole it from another person, as with the other items I've taken throughout my smoldering life. Like, that was deep. Like, even that's what I was talking about earlier. Like, I know this is YA, but that's like really sophisticated language to me, you know?
That particular passage, I actually got emotional and started crying because, you know, like I said, I really became one with her, and I felt like it let my mind wander to that moment. And when I was reading it, I just envisioned a destroyed place that is no longer there, and it's again, there's still that feeling of belonging that they're seeking, and they do that through their memories, but then they quickly shut it off because it's like they don't have time to really dwell in that, you know, because it makes them weak and susceptible to, you know, incoming attacks. And like that incident in the club where they, you know, she'd hit the other person, and to make the point, you know, because well, all it will probably take for them is for someone to come and, you know, see your weakness and hurt you and try to bring you down and destroy everything that you have already worked hard for. I don't really think the person is vicious. I agree with you. I just think that they don't really have an option. This is the new world. This is what it is, and it sucks.
Yeah. But that also, I know earlier, Gloria, you had mentioned the book of Eli, and that kind of connects to that also, as Denzel is kind of walking, I guess he's walking across the country, but to the West Coast, but every time he runs into like a different town, he now has to fight and prove himself, or somebody is challenging him. So like, it's almost like these like, it's called something, but it's like these different tests, like every time challenges that he must face before he can go on to the next town or the next level. I'm using like game terminology, but like the next level, you know? So after he beats one group, then he kind of advances and so on and so forth. But he must face these challenges before he can move on.
And it seems like that's how these girls feel too, especially Chief Raka. It's almost like she doesn't feel that they deserve to get like to the towers unless they fight, unless they prove themselves. They can't, it doesn't feel like a work hard and get there. It doesn't feel like that. It feels more like a battle, like a war. That really resonated with me, actually. I really wonder what the connection though is. Maybe y'all can help me figure it out. What is the connection with the Sueno addicts and really with the entire novel, or at least the first 5 chapters? So I was trying to figure out like what role they played. And doesn't everyone work and make the Sueno tabs? Is that how it worked? Or did I read that wrong?
Am I sure about the tabs? The sueños, you mean?
Does everyone in Mega City, they work to make those, right?
I think they use that as a currency.
Oh.
Yeah, I think that money no longer has value, and I think the sueño tabs, because again, it's a tough society, so they need something to kind of numb them or relax them or balance their day-to-day, you know, kind of like an alcoholic needs to drink a little bit to feel better and not have a hangover. I think they kind of use that as a currency to be able to function.
Wow.
But then I think also that because there were several references in the story where they were talking about not taking too much, because it numbs your dream of wanting to, again, the towers to get there. So, you know, yeah.
I guess I associated it with like a drug, and I thought I just kept thinking of New Jack City. I don't know why, but I kept thinking of like that scene when they were all like making drugs. I thought that's what the Sueno tabs in the Sueno warehouse was.
It could be.
I think you're right. Because there was a line in here about how after 2060, like the greed took over the city and then like destroyed the world, and there was like a new world. I think you're right. Okay, I guess I was wondering if it was supposed to be like a drug and a drug addict type of thing.
I think some people do use it as a drug, you know, because they're junkies. Like the guy that came and attacked the 12-year-old girl, you know, he wasn't in a healthy state of mind, and physically or physiological, because he was his whole being, was just complete mess. And that's why he lost that fight, you know. I don't know if, I was a little confused about that small scene of the story. I don't really know what was the objective there with the guy, you know, so.
Yeah, that was strange. Did they kill him?
I'm not sure. I think he was knocked out, because I think he says, let's send a message. So I think they heard him good enough, so wherever he is coming from, if he's this so-called gang that was popular at one point.
Yeah.
Can you remember the name? Yeah. So, yeah.
They're trying to send a message that that they're gonna win this fight. That's why like Chief Raka beat him up. Well, obviously because he was beating up the 12-year-old, but and she had to protect her. Yeah. But it was also a message to tell his group that you're not scaring us. We're gonna win this fight, and we're gonna get up to the towers.
Sometimes when I hear towers, I think of in the Bronx, Tracy Towers, which are the tallest buildings in the Bronx, and you can almost see them from anywhere in the Bronx.
Where are they at, Rob?
They're by DeWitt Clinton High School. If you take the 4 train almost to the last stop, the 4 train to Moshulu Parkway, Tracy Towers is right there. And I don't know why I think that, but I do. It's just whenever I think of towers, I think of Tracy Towers. You can probably see them from Westchester. They're really tall. Wow. And like where it's in the highest part of the Bronx. So, and they're big. They're round. They're like 35 stories each.
Yeah.
And they're round. And they're made out of poured concrete, so they look ugly. They're not. I should say they're not attractive.
They don't look ugly. You know what? I was just gonna mention that when I look there, you know, I look those buildings. That's what I like about them. They're round. It's different from, you know, all buildings are square and they're kind of round. They have a unique shape.
I know, but they're so gray. It's just all gray. Everything is gray on the building.
Well, that's true. But all buildings are gray. What building? Beige, gray. That's what. That's true.
Yeah, that's my 2 cents.
I mean, I thought about that too. I thought about like the bigger multi buildings uptown.
Peace.
They do have character. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
But that there's this like almost like a dog eat dog type of mentality.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's definitely about survival.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, as they say, the strongest survives. And that's what makes it so interesting when Lilliam kind of flips the script, because usually when we think of the strongest, we automatically think of men, but here she is, you know, saying the strongest will survive, but the strongest are women, because it's not, or young women, because it's not just about physical strength, but it's also about, you know, intelligence and street smarts. It's not just about, you know, your height or your weight.
What did you think about in terms of like the dystopian society, like, what did you think about the food pellets and the like electronic, it may have been in chapter 4 or 5, kind of like the things that they use, the things that they carry, if you will, like the electronics and like the food pellets that they eat, like.
We haven't gotten there.
You haven't gotten there yet? Let me go to chapter.
No, I did read it about the food. You know what that remind me also about Pavlov's experiment. I don't know if you guys ever heard about Pavlov's experiment with the salivating dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, when they're mentioning the electronics and the pellets, I'm like, are these people being conditioned to eat certain foods and enjoy it because that's all there is?
Yeah.
Is it like a conditioning thing? Because
Yeah.
I couldn't envision what the food was. I thought about like the military food. I thought about like the NASA packaged food that they take in outer space. And then I thought about Pavlov's experimental conditioning theory, because I just couldn't place it. You know, they're talking about technology and pellets.
Yeah.
It's my exact sentiments. I couldn't place like where exactly we were, and this mix, like I was saying earlier, of like very old school mixed with like super high tech. And actually, it's funny you say that, because I was thinking like literally like a pellet that you could put water on and maybe it like something else.
Yeah, like hydroponics, like something like that, something spongy that kind of grows. Yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting perspective, yeah.
You don't know what we're going to be eating in the future. We barely know what we're eating now.
That's so true.
Except for Brandon, of course, who only eats healthy.
I do only eat healthy.
We don't know.
But even like the language was very Bronx. You didn't think so, Ron?
I didn't get that far into it. I'm still trying to finish the other book that we're reading. So I just barely started this book. I have to like really catch up.
I think when you start reading it, you're going to, it's like, it's there's quite a bit of slang, I think, in it. And like, very like.
I know in her previous book, The Education of Margot Sanchez, she writes dialogue well for women, you know. She knows how, not that I know how young women talk, but just from, you know, what I hear when I'm, you know, in the street or anything, her dialogue is usually very vivid and real. So yeah, she has that down. And I don't know how long Lilliam lived in the Bronx, but I think she was born here, and I think she lived here until she went to college. So that's, you know, that's your formative years, you know, your youth and high school. And then she went to college, and she lives in California now. She lives in Los Angeles now, so.
I feel like definitely as like young women, like the women in this story, like everyone needs like a mentor, you know. And it seems like Chief Rafa is a mentor for some of those women, but I did think it was really interesting when she was describing the recruitment process. Do y'all remember that? It was like pretty early on in the book, maybe like chapter 2. and she was like saying how she didn't even remember in the recruitment to like be in a game, and she was saying like she didn't even remember her like first recruiter and how every girl wasn't chosen. You couldn't have any like you had to be healthy, you couldn't be sick or have any type of like weird disorder. And then the to end it, she says like the girls who weren't selected just had to figure it out on their own, or like figure it out by themselves or something like that. And that part really stuck out to me. Like the ones who weren't recruited to follow a path, to follow a right path, or at least the path of survival, the ones that weren't shown that had to figure it out on their own, you know. And that, something about that really resonated with me. And the idea of kind of that responsibility, right, that women have to girls. I thought about that a lot in these pages. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think that also when I read about that, it kind of shocked me a bit because normally we as women are nurturing. We have nurturing, you know, ways about ourselves, and especially when, I mean, I don't want to use politically incorrect terms, but as minorities, we understand and we're sympathetic to situations. We rather put someone else, you know, in front of us than put ourselves first. So when I read that, it threw me a little, because I know if I were in a situation like that, I don't think I could just throw someone aside because they may be ill or because they may not be strong enough. I always like to believe in the glass half full, you know, kind of thing. Give someone an opportunity first and see what they can do, because even the deadest of flowers can bloom if you give it proper care and love. So that was a little, I thought it was a little harsh, especially for young girls reading that, you know. So, and it also reminded me about our political theme going on right now.
Yeah.
You know, when, I don't know if it was one of the old mayors that were here before, they was a Mayor Bloomberg or somebody, they said that the elderly don't matter, you know, they don't need the care because, you know, I'm talking about the virus of COVID when it first hit. He mentioned, it was a video, I don't know, you know, sometimes they make these videos up, I don't know how, you know, much truth there is to that, but I did see him speak, and, you know, he mentioned this. He mentioned that the elderly are already old and they're gonna die anyway, so let's put that energy into the younger and the stronger. And to me, that was like, wow, like he's not the only one that thinks like that. There's a lot of people that actually feel that, you know, that the elderly and the weak don't really, you know, that we shouldn't be using our resources and waste our resources in them, because eventually, if you're 90 years old, you already live a long, productive life. So why use that on? But it's still, to me, that's, I just the kind of person I am. I've been told by a lot of people that I may be an empath, because I don't care. I can see an injured a bird about to die, and to me, I will try to do my best to bring it to life. Mm-hmm. And I don't have that kind of thought. I don't think like that. I would never think like that.
But Gloria, suppose it was like survival at all costs. You know what I mean? Because like, so where this book is set, it's like, you know, you will die unless you reach these towers, or your life will be dramatically different in a bad way unless you reach these towers. So could you then save everything and everyone if you know your life and maybe the life of a couple of your friends or your daughter depends on you reaching this tower, you know? You might think differently.
Maybe so. I feel that, I think our society is kind of that way today. Yeah. I feel like, you know, survival of the fittest, right? Everyone to themselves, and bring along whoever's with you with your way of thinking. But I just feel like love is a powerful remedy to everything. I really do feel that if you really have true love in your heart, that you can make anything work. I think if you can instill love into someone else, I think that person could be part of your team and your ideology and can help somebody else and make it work. I understand the theme of the story is about survival, but let's say once they get to the tower and they, you know, they make their dreams come true, they have everything that they need. What are you gonna do then? You're with a bunch of people that got there by any means necessary. How is your conscience? You know, are you gonna be able to sleep knowing that you did X, Y, and Z? You know, everyone that you came across in your path, you know, all those young girls that maybe just didn't have the proper training, or maybe they didn't have a meal that day and they seem weak to you. You discriminated against them by the way that they look and their state of being at that moment. You didn't give it a chance. Give it a chance.
Yeah.
I think right now it's like, you know how a lot of people that use substance abuse, they have this walls up and they don't let anybody in. You know, I think, because I was also looking at this novel through a metaphorical point of view. And I thought about a lot of things. I thought about people in drugs, people, you know, who drink alcohol, people that don't have families, people that have been abused, you know, and these people are injured on the inside and they have the biggest walls, you know, up. But there is something there that you have to be able to break through little by little, chip by chip. And I think once you, you know, get to the bottom of that sculpture, you're going to create a beautiful masterpiece. But it takes time. You have to give someone an opportunity. So I don't know, even in a dystopian society, I don't know that maybe I'll just be the first one to die because I will be the first one to give a hand out to help whoever. And I would like to die that way. I don't want to die the tough hero that didn't help someone along the way when I know that I could have. I cannot live like that with that thought in my mind.
I understand. And earlier, the book series I was trying to think of was The Hunger Games.
Oh, yeah.
That's what this book reminds me of. Thank you, Carla, because it's the movie The Hunger Games, and that's what I was trying to think of earlier.
I think that you made a really powerful point, Gloria, and I think that that's kind of the cycle, right? Like, you know that saying you can never go home again? I kind of feel like that in kind of what you were just describing, when you fought tooth and nail to get to a place that everyone else also has fought tooth and nail to get to. Like once you get there and you know, have achieved that goal, like you can't go back to the status quo, right? You can't go back to patrolling the streets anymore. Like you can never go home again. You can never go back to where it started, where it all started. And I think that though what's different, because I believe that, you know, I think I really do believe that saying. And really only because when you go back home, like you've changed because of all of your experiences and everything that you've had to go through and all the fights that you've been in, like you've changed. But when you go back home, nothing has changed. And it is, I think, extraordinarily difficult to like stay in that environment, to be in that environment when you're from it, you're of it, but you've changed so much.
Yeah.
That's hard to look at. You know, I think it's hard to look at and understand that that's also where you came from. That's kind of the mentality that I get from these few pages, is that they're almost ashamed of where they come and they're trying to get somewhere else. But I think you're right. When you get there, I mean, what are you gonna, that's not your home either. You know, like there's no way you're gonna feel comfortable there.
Maybe you will.
You know, you're with a bunch of fighters and there's no way the fighting is gonna stop. But
we do move from places. our place of comfort. At least some of us do. So you're born in one place, and you oftentimes you move because you outgrow that place, because you want more than that place. And where you move to becomes, it might take a while, it might take a day, it might take 10 years, but then that becomes your new home. And you build a comfort there. It might be a little different than, the same comfort you had growing up, but, we all do it. We all, there was, I lived at home as long as I could. So,
that's why I tell my son, listen, you almost 18, you better get ready. No, I'm just kidding.
dude, I was way past 18 when I moved out. So,
I'm not in a hurry for him to go.
when my mother suggested I move out. but you live in this place that seems very comfortable to you. And then when you go to someplace else, whether it is another neighborhood, city, or country, you build a comfort around that new place, usually.
Yeah. But the thing about that's different to me is that you liked your home,
No, I loved my home.
You loved your home. So going back there would bring back loving memories. You see what I'm saying? I don't think that's the case in these pages. I don't think the mega city, at least the level where they're at right now, I don't think it's a loving place. I don't think they love it. I don't think they love themselves in it. And I think that's really the kind of kicker for me. That's the driving force, is that they're not trying to like clean up the streets. They're not trying to make mega city a better place. Like, they're trying to evolve eternally. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's a more internal struggle than it is an external struggle. And I mean, that struggle can be harder. It is harder sometimes to change who you are on the inside than it is to get a new apartment. It is harder a lot of times, and it is a harder fight. Yeah. So I think that's kind of like, for me, like, was like the bigger theme in these first few pages, was like that kind of right on that peak of like the transformation, or like that coming of age, or kind of maybe even just that acknowledgement that something has to change,
Yeah.
Just to echo back on what you said, you just reminded me of the poem, The Road Less Traveled. And I don't know if you're familiar with the poem, but a lot of people misinterpret it because they think it's about choosing a road, and it's not. It's really about the journey, and what happens when you get there. And once you get there, you're left with, it could be regret. I mean, this is what's great about poetry, that you can interpret, what you took from it. But for me, it was more like, it was about the journey. And once I got to the end of that journey, it wasn't what I thought it would be. I could either be satisfied or not satisfied. It could be everything that I wanted or not. It could be, it could have been about learning something about myself that I needed to learn in order to arrive, to this state of mind that I needed to be to, continue my life. And I think the trajectory of the story might be something like that. They have this goal where they need to get to, they need the strongest of the strongest. But once they get there, they may not necessarily find what they were looking for. And maybe they needed an awakening, because even when you get to the towers, you don't really know what's going to be in those towers. You don't know if it's going to be home, because again, you need a humanistic part of yourself to be able to make that into a home. And you're always going to have to compete, because even the newcomers that are coming into the towers, there needs to be space in those towers for the newcomers. And it feels like you're constantly going to have to, prove yourself to kind of keep it, to kind of stay there. Just like in real society, when you have a job and you love it, and but there's a lot of competition within the company, and you have to prove yourself every day by doing a good job to produce immaculate work to be able to keep that job. You know, and we kind of saw that during COVID too, you know, with the essential workers and, you know, who's considered an essential worker, who's not considered an essential worker. But in my opinion in that is that everyone is pretty much an essential worker, and, you know, whatever work you're producing is essential to you because that's your bread and butter. So, I mean, this book is just so amazing in a way that there's just so many wonderful themes, and it really makes you think about you as a person and, you know, what you would do in a situation like that, and how you would develop a character that at the end of that journey, once you reach to where you get to, are you going to be the person to be there that can make a real change, that can affect people in a positive way? Because we don't want the bad people to get there with bad mentality. We want to create a new world that's good for everybody.
Very nice.
And I think that's been like the struggle, the idea of them kind of growing up in this world that is not meant for everybody. Everybody can't come. Everybody can't make it. Everybody can't have a good mentor or recruiter. You know, it's like this idea that you almost have to, like, you're instilled with that there's not enough. You know, like everything is rationed out. Even the food pellets, you know, everything is like, it's like on ration. It could down to the places where people live, down to the gang that you're in. And I think that thing, like that idea of like there not being enough for everyone is really powerful and really present in today's society as well. And I keep kind of coming back to, actually, I'll say what I was just in chapter 5, but one thing that I wrote down a couple of times was, this is like a violent book. Is it just me?
I don't know. I haven't read it, but you're talking about gangs, and you know, I'm visualizing here. I'm pretty sure, but I'm liking the pebbles. That's something. I mean, eating pebbles or something. That's what you're saying?
The pellets, the food
There's
pellets.
a lot of stuff interesting that you're saying, so I'm looking forward to read it. But you know, when you mention gangs, what can you know? There's always something being more negative than positive.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's the view, I think.
And those Hunger Game books, they're kind of violent also, and I think that this is based on those Hunger Game books. So they can be, you know, there's always conflict, and you know, conflict. And I use the metaphor or compared it to Robin Hood, but you know, these people aren't really shooting bows and arrows. They have, you know, they're usually using. I mean, it's kind of, it feels often like a video game, but it's still real. You know what I mean? So like, it is still kind of like destructive in a way. Like as you move through to get to these towers, there's a lot, you know, there's a lot going on. So as far as violence and fighting and things like that.
Brandon, if you.
Carla, you talking or?
She was telling me I was muted. Just and I know she's doing the play on gender roles, but women and girls just usually aren't this violent, you know? They usually aren't. I mean, there may be petty and maybe like mean girls, but usually they're not this violent. So that I am interested in, kind of seeing develop. And we're not into violence, but seeing develop into maybe a different way. Using their smarts more, for example, to like defeat.
Am I going through finally?
We hear you, Carla.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Carla.
Okay. No, I think it totally depends. I think it totally depends on where you are raised, right? Because there's some girls that the violence, like, taking it back to that relationship that you're trying, that similar that you're trying to do with the Hunger Games. The leader in that particular movie trilogy of the book is a girl, and in order for her to survive, she has to be violent and strong, but she's at the same time she's very nurturing. And I think that's what's happening in this particular book. Like, you're nurturing, but in order for you to make it to the top, you gotta be tough, and you gotta play by the rules of the land, otherwise you're not going to survive. So, and
Yeah.
and you look at that women's jails, like women that are incarcerated in our days, right? The acts that they commit, they will never cross my mind. But women are committing these horrendous crimes out there, but because of where they are in society and the life that they have, right? So I think that's where she's bringing a lot of this stuff from.
Okay, yeah, I can see 100%.
Lifestyle.
I like how you broke that down too. And I think we're going to see, like, I guess this is why I say that, because I think that, like, it's so hard to have a redeeming character, to make a character likable when they're violent. Is that just me?
Well, that depends, because, and maybe you're gonna hate me now, but the movie The Joker, I told you, I've been told I'm like an empath. So I don't know how much to this.
I know where you're going with that, and I agree with you.
Yes, you see, I don't even have to explain
What?
it.
I don't know. What?
Oh.
Well, The Joker, in the latest movie with Joaquin Phoenix.
Oh.
Okay, a lot of people will look at this movie and say, "Oh my God, it's violent, is gruesome, it's a lot of gore, he's sick, he's a psychopath." But every time I looked at him, I felt nothing but
Empathy
and sadness, and I felt like he was misjudged, misunderstood.
Yes.
I don't know if he was really living a reality, or it was his own reality. Like,
yes.
He, made up this whole world, and it's not really real. But you empathize with him. You felt so bad. Like you wanted to help him. I didn't judge him. I mean, I didn't condone the actions, whether they were real or not. Obviously, but I just felt like he was somebody who was really broken. And I think, like, the part where he murdered his mother, I didn't take that as a vicious act. I took that as in, Mom, you're about to find out really bad things about me, and I want to take you out of your misery, because I don't want you to be ashamed of me, because you love me right now, but once you see this and find this out about me, you're gonna hate me, and I cannot take that. I felt like it was maybe a mercy killing, rather than her being, even hurt. Even she could have been misjudged, like if he didn't, kill her. I mean, I don't know. I didn't see him as an evil villain. I saw him as a broken character that needed help.
That needed help, that needed medication early on, and it was never given to him.
And I see Roca like that. I see her like someone who's nurturing and just broken a little bit, just because of the circumstances that they're in at this point.
Yes, I've never seen The Joker, and you just gave all the movie away.
Oh, you gotta see the movie though.
No, she didn't. You'll enjoy it.
Watch for yourself. Maybe you can share a little bit, because I think it could relate a little bit to the book. Maybe
I don't agree with you, Gloria, but I definitely understand how you feel, but I don't agree. I thought he was a psycho. That's plain and simple.
You know, whenever I talk about the Joker with a male, that's what they say. But when I talk to a woman about it, your point of view is what comes across. That he needed help from the very beginning.
That is so fascinating to me. And that's why I think that she's so brilliantly kind of playing with the gender roles, because it's creating this type of dialogue, you know? What can a woman be both like the chief, if you will, and also the motheriest nurturer of the pack as well?
But isn't it that part of society as well, when a woman tries to make it in the business world, right? She has to put this front that she's tough and rugged, and has to put that being a mother not so early, put it on later on, because otherwise she's going to be weakened in the workforce.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have to, it's 8:30. This was really awesome.
Yeah.
This was like small but mighty. I really appreciate you guys coming and sharing your thoughts and your time and your themes, and this was really great.
Yeah. No, thank you all for coming. So this is what our book club is like, and we do it. Most book clubs meet monthly, and we meet every week. So next week we're going to discuss chapters 6 through 11. So if you come back, and encourage, if you know other parents with teenagers or tweens, encourage them to participate also. They just have to, read some of the book so that they can come in and be ready to discuss it. But as you see, we just don't talk about the book. We talk about life and movies and, everything. So we're just trying to build a community where we can kind of gather together and really, discuss ideas more than anything else. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So thank everyone for coming tonight.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
All
See
right.
you next week.
Get home safe.
Take care. Hopefully see me next week.
Yeah.
Yes.
Brony, be ready next week.
Yes, I will.
All right.
Films coming up, so I'm pretty sure 2 more soon.
Okay.
Matter of fact, hopefully for class I could do it.
Sounds good.
Take care, Ron. Bye-bye.
See you next week. Bye-bye.